I watched my 69-year-old son bend over my counter and pour a pinch of white powder into my orange juice. 2 weeks later, I'd be lying on that same kitchen floor on purpose, listening to him frantically call for help while I tasted the metallic afterhint of that powder on my tongue and wondered how long he'd been planning this. If you had paused time right there, you'd see a smiling family photo on the fridge, a ceramic rooster paperweight by the toaster, and a grandmother about to let a glass slip through her fingers like an actress in a play she never auditioned for. You'd also see one detail people always miss: the way my son's free hand, the one not holding the little foil packet, trembled. I said, "Oops," and I dropped the glass. It shattered so perfectly it could have been rehearsed. The juice spread in a vivid sunburst across the tile. He flinched, then pasted on the kind smile he has for neighbors and telemarketers. "Mom, are you okay?" he said, already hunting paper towels. "I was just adding your vitamin powder." "Vitamin powder," I repeated, as if I believed in magic vitamins. I made a show of steadying myself on the counter, the way people expect women my age to steady themselves. 69, a year that looks like twin fishtails when written in cake frosting. I felt neither old nor foolish, but I'd learned that people with plans often count on us to be both. "Let me pour you another," he said. "No need," I said. I bent, winced, and made a harmless show of my back. "What a mess." "I'll grab the broom." He took the broom from my hand, the way good sons do. He knelt to gather the larger shards with a dish towel, and I watched the white granules that clung to the towel's wet threads. They clumped, then dissolved. It was an ordinary Tuesday, overcast and muggy. The trash pickup rattled down Maple Street like a giant's pockets full of coins. Across the way, Mrs. Dennehy watered her peonies, pretending not to look at us through the window. Everything ordinary. Yet I would think about that Tuesday at night, the same way one thinks about a misstep on a staircase, how gravity waits, patient as a cat. I cleaned the sticky sun circle off the floor while my son, Thomas, the same boy who once cried because he'd broken his green crayon, talked about an article he'd read on new regimens for better compliance. He said compliance like a doctor. He is not a doctor. "You'll feel steadier if we keep you on schedule," he told me, and he tapped his phone. "We can sync the alarms to mine." "I've got an alarm," I said. He frowned at my flip phone, the one with numbers big enough to read without glasses, and then set a second glass in front of me, this time without powder, and kissed my hair. Thomas is 45, but he still kisses my hair like he is 12 and proud to show me he isn't embarrassed to love his mother. The worst trick disappointment pulls is that it borrows the shape of love. My name is Lila. The house on Maple Street is mine. My son's house sits 3 doors down, identical stonework, siding the color of fresh butter, a porch swing that groans in protest when he climbs on it at night. When my husband died 7 years ago, Thomas insisted I move closer, and, because grief robs you of angles, I said yes. I tell you that so you understand. In our little loop of the street, my son's kindness is part of the weather. He keeps my walk salted in winter. He stacks my mulch. He changes air filters. He is the kind of man who appears with soup when you cough once on the phone. Which is why the powder in the juice felt like the thud of a dropped book in a quiet room. After he left, I wiped the counters twice, then a third time for the powder I couldn't see. I poured the rest of the orange juice down the sink. I sat at the table and looked at the pill bottles I keep in a ceramic bowl shaped like a cabbage. Blood pressure, thyroid, the one for nerve pain in my hands that tastes like chewing a penny if I forget to eat first. The newest prescription, a pale blue tablet, sat unopened. The specialist had said the name slowly, acronym like a tiny marching band, dose like a winding staircase. "We'll titrate," he'd said. "Increase gradually. We need you to take the full dose, Lila." "I'll take what I can tolerate," I'd replied. He smiled without his eyes. "It's not that I don't trust doctors. I trust my body more." That afternoon I tried to nap, but the juice kept pooling in my mind, the white palmful sifting through my glass. In the quiet, the shadows of tree branches made a cobweb on my ceiling. A fly traced the same dumb rectangle near the window. I got up. I told the house I was just stretching my legs, but the truth is I started to spy. Quietly, the way old women do everything if they want people to leave them alone. I put on my walking shoes, the ones with insoles like clouds. I slipped my little digital camera into my cardigan pocket, the one I use for birds and birthday cakes, set to click SHHH instead of click. On my way to the porch, I plucked my mail, and this was the first bad idea that felt like a good one, the tiny key to Thomas's mailbox. He gave it to me when he and Hannah moved in 18 years ago. In case of packages when we're out, he'd said. In 18 years, I had never used it. Today, I told myself I was looking for a flyer, a coupon, the thick folded paper of a community newsletter. Anything. I didn't start at the mailbox, though. I walked the loop. I nodded to Mr. Dennison's dog, Scout, who loves everyone but me, perhaps sensing my secret. I took the long way past the old orchard fence. I stopped at the corner where you can see the pharmacy if you stand on your toes. I held my camera to my chest and let the lens peek between the iron rails. The little bell over the pharmacy door rang and rang, old-fashioned as a milkman. People came and went, bags white as gulls in their hands. Later, I remember the precise moment the first bead of sweat marched down my spine. It was when I saw my son come out of the pharmacy with a small paper bag and a look that was not joy and not fear, exactly, but a mix of both, like a boy about to jump from a high rock into cold water. He turned left instead of right, which meant he was headed for the side alley and the parking lot behind the laundromat, where no one sees you get into your car. I waited until he was out of sight before I moved. It's true what they say, small women can be invisible if they wish to be. I slipped down the slope, ducked behind the maple with the split trunk, and peered into the parking lot. Thomas had the bag open. He shook something from a blister pack into his palm. He glanced around, quick and guilty, the way he did at 16 when he stole extra cookies from the jar. He tilted his hand, and the light caught the edges of whatever he held, small, pale, not quite round. Then he closed his fist and slipped it into his pocket while the empty blister pack went into the pharmacy bag. He put the bag in the passenger seat and drove away. I took a picture of nothing, the warm shimmer over the asphalt where his car had been. It made my stomach turn. On my way home, I did what I'd told myself I wasn't going to do. I opened his mailbox and pulled the stack out like a magician with scarves. Flyers, a coupon packet, a letter with the bank's name in important font, an envelope stamped with the name of an insurance company I recognized from Saturday morning advertisements. I stuffed it all back, all but the last one. I held that one under my cardigan, practiced sinner that I am. At my kitchen table, I didn't open it. I read the return address and the through-window words, policy details enclosed, beneficiary update. I told myself I was making sure my name wasn't being used in a way I hadn't approved. I told myself I could slip it back into his mailbox later, the way I slipped quarters into parish candles and pretended the coins were not pesos I'd saved from our Cancun anniversary trip. The envelope's glue seemed half asleep and let go easily. Paper slid onto my tablecloth like a breath. I found his policy, a neat ledger of love and fear, names, dates, amounts, the invisible arithmetic that people make with their lives. My name was there, small and steady, under secondary. The primary slot read Hannah, his wife. Then, a new line, contingent, Marigold Henderson, my granddaughter, 9 years old and queen of sidewalk chalk. There was a form tucked behind the letter. Additional beneficiary inquiry, parent medical liability. The words made my coffee taste bitter. I felt shame lick the back of my neck, shame because I had no right to read this, shame because I had, and what I saw told a story different from the one I wanted. But the powder in the juice kept saying, he is timing you. He is measuring you. He is changing something without asking. I resealed the envelope with a glue stick and a prayer and returned it while Hannah walked the baby in her stroller and waved to me with the hand not scrolling her phone. She didn't notice my shaking. That night, my house breathed like a sleeping animal. Pipes sighed. The old radiator whispered. I lay there and listened to Thomas's front door creak, the porch boards groan, the faint clink of a bottle against a glass down his way. At 2 a.m, I saw his kitchen light blink on and off, once, twice. He was up. I pictured him counting out white squares onto the counter, reading the back of a box, Googling. I pictured the search words he might type if he were what I feared. Dose, overdose, how long, how much, citrus. I am not proud that my heart thudded with both dread and a detective's ugly excitement. People like me get carried by stories. That is our failing and also our only entertainment. I woke with resolve. If the stage was set, I would try my role. The next afternoon, I started to cough. Not a real cough at first, just a politely barked signal that turned into a genuine rasp because the air was damp and the house held dust no matter how often I swore it didn't. I called Thomas and mentioned, casually, that I might be coming down with something. He sounded relieved. "I'll bring dinner," he said. "I've been wanting to try that chicken soup recipe your doctor recommended. It's easy on the stomach." "Our stomachs or mine?" I said. "Yours," he said. "Just rest." He arrived with a shopping bag that looked heavy as a sermon. He set to work like a TV host, pan out, onion halved, garlic neatly chopped, carrots sliced on a bias, because that's how I told him once food should be sliced if you want to feel fancy. He talked while he cooked. "Work's been good," he said, which means work has been less than good. "Marigold's soccer tryouts are next week." He stirred and smiled down into the steam like it was a letter from an old flame. He sprinkled herbs from a jar I didn't recognize, a label peeled partway off. He added a handful of something pale from a Ziploc bag I recognized too well, my pills, but broken and mixed. He glanced at me, then back at the pot. Gently, he murmured to the spoon. I stood and swayed. "I'm dizzy," I said. It wasn't entirely a lie. Unease makes the floor tilt, even if you're sober as a stone. He rushed to me and guided me to the chair. His hands were warm and careful. "Maybe lie down," he said. I laughed and wheezed in the same breath. Age gives you permission for such unseemly sounds. "I'll rest after I taste it," I said. I watched him ladle a small bowl, squeeze a lemon wedge over the top, stir, blow across the surface like the breath of a cautious god. He slid it toward me with the same smile he'd had when he learned to ride a bicycle, soft and eager. I lifted the spoon and let it clatter to the table. "Clumsy me," I said. He didn't hide his disappointment well. He picked up the spoon, fetched a clean one, and when he turned his back to rinse the first, I tipped the soup into the plant beside the sink. "Goodbye, philodendron, you served valiantly," and went to the couch, where I made my eyes close in the slow. Heavyweight people close eyes when they have fevers and want to be let alone. Thomas tucked a blanket around me the way I used to tuck him in, smoothing the wool over my shoulders like prayer. His phone buzzed. He answered and turned away, and I learned in that moment how a mother can go still as a photograph to hear better without moving. "Hi," he said. "Yes, I'm with her." "No, she still doesn't want to. I know the full doses." "Yes, I know. But she gets scared when she reads the side effect list." "No, I didn't tell her about the adjustment." She'd refuse. "Yes. Yes, I'm watching for dizziness." "No, not dangerous, just okay. Thank you." He hung up and sat on the ottoman, elbows on knees, staring at his hands. He rubbed his thumb against his palm the way he did as a boy when he lied about breaking a window and had to decide whether to admit it. Fear is stupid, but it is also persuasive. I could have sat up and said, "Who was that?" He would have said, "The clinic nurse," and I could have said, "Why without me?" But I lay there and let a different story settle in the room, the one where the powder in the juice had a skull and crossbones label, and the calls were about my will and the new insurance forms, and the word compliance meant obedience. I didn't sleep. I noticed how much soup he poured down the drain before he left, embarrassed when he discovered I had not eaten as much as he'd hoped. I noticed the grocery bag he carried out contained the jar with the peeled label and the zipper bag of pale pills. My mind made a cruel math: powder, nurse, bag, beneficiary. One and one and one and one, and suddenly, because fear always does this, the sum was murder. The next days I continued to spy. Quietly. I tucked my tiny camera on the bookshelf and let it watch the kitchen clock. I collected small, mean facts like people collect salt shakers. Hannah asked me, oddly cheerful, what brand of life insurance Grandpa had preferred when he was alive. She said, "We're looking at policies, you know, now that we're older, just curious." I took a picture of the way her eyes slid to the side when she asked. My doctor's office called to confirm my follow-up. "Any dizziness?" And I said, in the most neutral tone I could manage, "I suppose." I took a picture of the answering machine light blinking after the call, as if that blinking itself proved intent. When you are convinced danger lives under your bed, even your slippers look like wolves. On Friday, my friend Ethel drove me to church for the food pantry, but I didn't go in. I told her I wasn't feeling up to lifting boxes, then asked, too casually, if we could swing by the pharmacy instead. Ethel looks like a daisy, but she has the heart of a linebacker. She parked with one tire on the curb and said, in and out. Inside, I browsed the shampoo aisle like a tourist. The pharmacist, the young one with eyelashes a mile long, asked if I needed help. I said I was waiting for my son. She smiled too brightly. He's a good one, she said. Always asks the right questions. I filed the words under interesting and stepped away. Near the consultation window, I heard Thomas's low voice and the pharmacist's polite hush. I caught, like a fish thrown and flashing, these phrases: caregiver support, half-life, adherence. I heard my son say, but if she reads the warnings, she panics. I saw him sign something on a tablet, his mouth a tense line. He turned, and I ducked behind a rotating stand of sunglasses, where Ethel found me pretending to try on a pair with rhinestones. I like you in ridiculous, she said. Makes you look dangerous. On the way home, she asked if I was all right. I told her about the powder. I did not tell her about the envelope. I did not tell her that I had begun to imagine the feel of the smooth underside of a coffin lid as a reasonable texture. Ethel gripped the steering wheel like she wanted to steer the car into whoever had hurt me. Your Thomas isn't that kind, she said. But if he were, we'd be two old crows difficult to pluck. She winked, which made me feel braver than I felt 5 minutes before. That night, I staged the fall. To be fair to my own bones, I didn't want to hit the floor with all of me. The hips are precious real estate at my age. So I slid one foot on a damp rag I'd left near the sink, let my knee knock the cabinet gently, and lowered myself with a thud that sounded convincing without breaking anything I'd need later. I let the soup spoon clatter, props matter. I groaned, which was not hard to do. You can always groan if you think of the things people have said to you when you were trying to be brave. Thomas arrived in less than 4 minutes. He must have been nearby. I could smell his aftershave when he knelt beside me. Mom, he said, voice high and thin with fear. Did you eat? He cupped the back of my head as if it were made of spun sugar. I'm calling. While he called, I watched his face. I don't know what I expected. A flash of calculation? A tiny satisfied smile? Instead, I saw a man who loved his mother and who had not expected to find her on the floor. I saw a boy who, at 6, once stood white-faced by the back steps while I bandaged the finger he'd cut on a can lid. I saw sweat bead at his hairline. I heard him say, she's dizzy, yes, the new medication, no, she's not nauseated, step by step, please. I could have sat up then and said, I am pretending. I chose not to. This is my second admission of the day. I owe you honesty even if I did not give any to Thomas then. I lay there and let him put a pillow under my knees, open a window for air, tilt a cup of water toward my lips. I did not drink. The ambulance din must have rattled every bird out of our elms. Ethel says later she stood on her porch with her robe half open and her curlers still in, making the sign of the cross with a wooden spoon. The medics were kind in the efficient way people are when they've seen every silly accident and every awful truth a house can offer. They asked my age. They asked my history. They checked my pupils with a penlight that made my heart feel like a moth. They glanced at the pill bottles in my cabbage bowl. New prescription? One asked. I nodded. Thomas answered for me. She hasn't been taking the full dose, he said, miserable. She's worried about side effects, so we were going to. I thought I could. Look, I've been cooking for her, trying to help, but... We'll figure it out, the medic said, not unkindly. Let's get her checked. At the hospital, the world went cold and institutional, a white so bright that even my best thoughts looked gray. The doctor on call was kind and brisk, like the first day of October. He asked too many questions with not enough space between them and my answers, because I was still rehearsing the poisoning I'd assigned to my son, only told half the truth. I remember one line in particular, delivered with a softness that made me want to throw my shoe. Autonomy matters, Mrs. Flores, but so does adherence. Sometimes side effects are the ghost stories we tell ourselves to avoid what will help us. I'm a person, not a dosing chart, I said. He nodded as if he agreed with both of us. He adjusted my schedule, wrote instructions in block letters, told Thomas to purchase a pill organizer with a lock. He said, "You two should talk to someone together about boundaries," as if boundaries were something one could buy at the pharmacy between sunscreen and greeting cards. By the time I was tucked into my bed again, the street's crickets were sawing their midnight fiddles, and I'd run out of excuses. I told Thomas goodnight and turned my face to the wall, where the shadow of a branch looked like a long arm reaching. I didn't sleep. In the blue hour, shame swam up out of the dark and sat on my chest like a cat. The envelope. The camera. The plant drinking soup like a martyr. The way I'd let fear write the script of my days because one white packet made me remember every story I'd ever heard about sons and wills and heavy hands. I woke to sunlight and a text from Hannah, "Can I bring you scones? The good blueberry kind." A heart. I said yes, because I wanted proof that the world had not narrowed into a story where I was only the victim and my son only the villain. When she arrived, she opened every shade as if light were medicine. She poured tea. She buttered scones with the care of someone who knows butter is the only acceptable apology. She said, "You scared us," and tucked her hair behind her ear. "I scared myself," I said. "Tom's been worried sick," she said. "He thinks you hate him." I took a breath. Then another. "Not hate," I said. "Fear. And maybe not even of him. Of what could be done to me in the name of love." Hannah's eyes softened. "He's clumsy with love," she said. "A bull in a china shop. Your china shop, especially." I laughed in spite of myself, which made her laugh, which made the room feel less like the inside of a coffin. "He shouldn't have changed my doses without me," I said. "No," she agreed. "He shouldn't have." Then she gave me something unexpected. "He's been desperate. He thinks if he does everything exactly right, he can keep you forever. It's not rational, and it's not fair to you. But it's human." When she left, I ran out of places to hide. I could not keep spying and still respect myself. I dialed my son. "Can you come over?" I asked. He came, breathless, as if I'd been bleeding. He sat on the edge of the chair like it might buck. I patted the cushion beside me. He came. For a strange instant we were two versions of ourselves stacked on top of each other like ghosts, me at 32, him at 6, me now, him now. I reached for his hand and, because I am not infinitely gentle, I did not hold it kindly. "You put powder in my juice," I said. He shut his eyes. "I told myself a story about that powder," I said. "A bad one." "It was crushed tablets," he said, voice raw. "The blue ones. You won't take the full dose. You've been foggy and dizzy, and you won't tell the doctor the truth because you don't want them to take away your independence. I know it's not my job to trick you. I know it. But I panicked, Mom. I keep reading that if we don't stay ahead of this, we lose time. I thought if I made it easy I'm sorry. I hate that I scared you." I watched his body fold, awkward as a newborn deer. I kept my face hard because softness is a drug in itself. "You brought something home from the pharmacy in a bag and hid the blister packs. So you wouldn't see," he said. "So you wouldn't dig in your heels. You asked about life insurance," I said. "We updated ours," he said. "Marigold's college fund. And," he swallowed, "in case I ever have to help you financially. There's a program I've been reading about for caregivers. It asked if I had a parent with a chronic condition. That letter in the mail was a query in case we needed to add a rider. None of this had to do with taking something from you. I am trying badly, obviously, to be ready if you need more help later. I'm sorry." I let go of his hand. I walked to the cupboard and took down the small box where I keep things that make my mouth go dry. In it were the edited camera clips. Yes, I had clipped them on my computer, like a villain in a courtroom drama, the copy I'd made of the envelope's contents. Yes, I had made a copy. If we sin, we might as well sin effectively. And a printout of a caregiver forum I'd found when I typed his pharmacy phrases into the search bar. I pushed them across the table to him, one by one, as if dealing out cards in a mean game. "I went through your mailbox," I said. He looked up, shocked and then not. "You did what you had to do to feel safe," he said. "This is one thing I have always loved about my son. He is quicker to forgive me than I am to forgive him. I made a villain out of you, I said. The word felt thick on my tongue. Because I didn't want the real villain. Which is losing control, I said. And time. And needing you. He nodded and put his head in his hands and cried, not quietly. We are very poor at crying in my family. We prefer stoicism and a good set of tongs for hot pans. Listening to my son cry in my kitchen, I felt the story I'd been telling dissolve like the powder in the juice that first afternoon. It was embarrassing how quickly love can reassert itself, like a vine climbing over a fence when you turn your back for a weekend. When we were done with tears, I said, "We're going to a family psychologist." He looked startled, then relieved. Okay. And you're not putting anything in anything I eat or drink unless I'm watching and saying yes out loud, I said. Okay. And you will tell me every conversation you have with any medical professional about me. If it's about me, I am present or I am on speaker. Okay, he said again. I deserve that. And I will talk to my doctor like a grown woman, I said. Which means naming my fears instead of folding them into soup and pretending I can't taste them. It also means I will take the dose I agree to, rather than the one I prefer in secret. Okay, he whispered, and his shoulders dipped in that way that means bones become lighter in an instant. We found a therapist in the next town over. Her office had rugs that looked like the ocean and lamps that made all of us gentler. Her name was Dr. Hale, the kind of name that makes you think of whales and wind. She had short hair and shoes like anchors. She made us fill out forms that asked questions blunt as a butter knife. Who makes medical decisions? What is your fear? What is your story? I wrote, fear that medication will make me foggy. Fear that losing a little today will make me lose everything tomorrow. Fear of being handled instead of held. Thomas wrote, fear of losing her before I have to. Fear of doing the wrong thing with the right intention. Fear of waiting and then wishing I hadn't. Dr. Hale read, nodded, then said, you're both trying to keep each other. That's sweet. It's also dangerous when it turns into control. She had us practice sentences that sounded like building blocks. I feel scared when. I feel disrespected when. I commit to. I told Thomas, I feel scared when you make plans about me without me. He told me, I feel scared when you pretend you're fine to avoid a treatment that might help you. I said, I commit to reading the actual instruction sheet with you rather than just the list of everything that could go wrong. He said, I commit to not being your secret pharmacist. We laughed a little, and it made us braver. We worked out a schedule. I take the medication at the dosage we negotiated with my doctor. We track any side effects honestly. We use the pill organizer with a lock not because I am a thief for myself, but because we both want structure we can point to when fear gets loud. We agreed on rules about the mail, both of us. No more sneaking each other's envelopes, and yes, you can laugh at the fact that a 69-year-old mother and a 45-year-old son made a policy about rifling. Dr. Hale said something I carry around like a talisman. In families, love is the impulse, but consent is the language. We practiced speaking that language, and, to our surprise, neither of us died from it. I wish I could tell you that everything turned to silk overnight. It did not. The first week on the agreed dose, I woke one morning so dizzy I could taste electricity. I wanted to flush every pill in the house. Thomas wanted to call the doctor at 6:02 a.m. with the urgency of an air raid siren. Instead, we sat at the table and looked at the symptom diary we had made together. Nita's homework, a star sticker on Tuesday because I took the pill on time and felt fine, a rain cloud drawn on Wednesday because my mouth tasted like pennies. We called it 9. The nurse had a protocol and a voice like tea with lemon. We adjusted. The diary pages filled with notes. I didn't like everything I wrote there, but the same way pilgrims write their names on stones to mark a climb, I wrote, and the climb continued. Meanwhile, the neighborhood returned to its routines. Scout barked at nothing. The trash truck sang its clanky song. Mrs. Dennehy's peonies went brown. Ethel baked a cake and left it on my porch with a note that said, text me when you slice, so I can come pretend I have self-control. Hannah began to say, do you want help? Instead of, I'll handle that. My granddaughter drew a chalk hopscotch that extended from my step to her own, a pastel bridge between our houses. I hopped the squares on a day when my joints felt like buttery hinges. Thomas hooped like I'd won the lottery. We kept laughing at ourselves and discovered that once you choose laughter on purpose, it comes to you more easily. At our third session with Dr. Hale, she pushed a pamphlet toward me. Caregiver Boundaries for Adult Children, it said. She gave Thomas a matching one, Autonomy for Aging Parents You Love. The design was ugly, the content not. You won't be perfect, she said. You're practicing being two adults together, not a parent and a child. The habits are old. The love is older. The language is new. We tried the language out loud at home like two actors learning lines, making a ham of it so we wouldn't be afraid. I can take my own pill now, I'd say. Thank you for offering. He'd say, I hear you, and my hands can stay in my pockets. We stumbled, then steadied. Once I snapped, can I live, when he hovered too near the stove. He went quiet, then returned with a stool and lowered himself to my height and said, I'm sorry. I can sit far away and still love you. I cried. He cried. We are messy. We are also learning. Somewhere in those weeks I took the envelope copy from the box and shredded it. I took the camera off the bookshelf and put it back into its case. I watered the philodendron until the soil was clean of soup. It forgave me. Plants are more generous than people. One night, after I had put the pillbox into its drawer, I stood in the kitchen holding a glass of orange juice. My hands shook a little but not much. I called Thomas. Can you come over? I asked. He arrived like a storm, hair damp, breath louder than necessary. I held out the juice. I want you to watch me drink this, I said. Because the first day I saw you pour powder into my glass, I changed the shape of you in my head. I want to change it back with my own hands. He stared at the glass as if it were a live wire. Then he nodded. I raised the glass and drank. The juice tasted like juice, sweet, tart, a little like sunshine. We both exhaled, long and ridiculous. Then we laughed because it seemed silly to make a ceremony out of orange juice, but it wasn't silly at all. It was a ritual, and rituals are simply the ways we tell our bodies the truth. Here is the truth I didn't know how to hold at the beginning of the summer. A son can be frightened enough to act like a thief and still love his mother cleanly. A mother can be frightened enough to act like a detective and still want her son near. We each can be wrong, loudly, and still be the person the other trusts to stand under a terrible sky. Do I sound too soft for the woman who once dropped a glass on purpose and staged a fall? Maybe I am softer. Maybe that is what happens when you put the story down and pick the person up. Last Wednesday, my doctor smiled, this time with his eyes, and said, How are you tolerating the dose, Lila? I said, I made an agreement with my son and with myself. We are honoring it. He nodded and, this is what changes people. He looked at Thomas and said, and you? Thomas said, I'm learning how to help without handling. I'm not perfect. The doctor said, none of us are, and wrote something on a chart that I hope read, she is not prey, she is a partner. That afternoon I took out the will I'd been too superstitious to review. I called my lawyer and asked for a meeting. At the table, with my son beside me, we made everything tidy. Hannah's name sits properly. Marigold's college fund is spelled exactly right. If I ever need more care, we have a plan that doesn't require anyone to break anything into powder. I signed things that terrified me and felt my shoulders lower half an inch. On the way home, we stopped at the bakery with the hot loaves at 4 o'clock and bought bread so fresh it sighed. We walked back up Maple Street like two thieves finally returning the goods. On my porch I cut slices and handed one to Thomas. He took a bite and chewed like a convert. He said, I'm sorry again, Mom. I said, I forgive you again. We sat under the porch light while the moths threw themselves against it, hopeless and gallant. He told me about a podcast he liked. I told him about a neighbor whose roses never bloom no matter how she threatens them. He laid his head, for one ridiculous boyish moment, on my shoulder. I rubbed his back and felt the familiar ridge of a scar he got when he climbed the fence at 13 and pretended afterward that all scars were proof he would be a man with stories. I do have one more confession. Sometimes, late, when the house breathes and the trees draw careful lines on my ceiling, I picture that first afternoon again, the powder, the glass, the word oops. In my mind, I sometimes freeze the scene right before the shatter, hold it there like a photograph I can enter and step around in. On that still stage, My son is not a villain and I am not a victim. There is only worry and love and two people training themselves to speak consent out loud. Even in the still frame I can tell, the white in his hand is less like poison and more like fear, crushed up and poured into anything handy. It is not the story I started, and thank God for that. A month later, Dr. Hale gave us homework that made me roll my eyes. Write each other a letter you won't send, she said, then read it out loud during your session. Thomas went first. He read about the day he stood at the pharmacy drive-through window and realized he was asking a stranger how to get his mother to do something she did not want to do. He wrote about the sick high he felt when he poured powder into my drink. He thought, for a heartbeat, that someone strong was finally in charge. He wrote how that high turned into a weight so heavy he couldn't sleep. He cried. I cried. Dr. Hale offered the box of tissues as if it were communion. I read about the envelope and the camera and the way the story of inheritances sits in the back of my head like a mean uncle at a holiday table, drunk and ready to ruin everything. I read about the word widow and how I've let it make me wary even when nobody has asked me to be. I read about peonies and soup and orange juice and the sound a glass makes when it agrees to be your alibi. We left that day and drove, without saying so beforehand, to the lake where Thomas learned to swim. We sat at the picnic table with a checkerboard carved into it by someone else's knife and watched the geese complain. Remember when you thought the water would swallow you? I asked. You made me walk in holding your hand, he said. He smiled without sadness. You let go before I noticed. That, I said, was one of my better tricks. I'll try it, he said. The letting go. Do it slowly, I said. Not because I am fragile, but because I don't like to be startled. We laughed. On the drive home, rain started in gentle on-off intervals, like a faucet testing itself. We passed the pharmacy. The bell above the door rang as someone went in. The ring sounded harmless. It is a gift to hear a sound and not attach it to your own doom. I'm learning that. In case you're wondering how stories like this end, the kind meant to shock you and then unshock you, let me tell you, they don't end, they level. Some days I take my pill and feel nothing but a mild wish for toast. Some days I curse every clever person who ever said the word titrate as if it were a dance step. Some days my son forgets himself and lines my vitamins up like toy soldiers, and I remind him, with a raised eyebrow, that love is not a military parade. He grins, sheepish, and retreats. Some days we both behave as if we are in a television show that hires a therapist to sit us down with lamps and low voices, and some days we behave like we are in the messy spin-off we write for ourselves. When neighbors ask how I am, I say, good enough. When Ethel asks, I say, learning. She says, that's all God ever wanted. She claims he scribbled that in the margins of her Bible. Last night I had dinner at Thomas's, 3 doors down, a short walk if you stop to pet the cat that hates petting. Hannah made salmon I could cut with a spoon. Marigold showed me the bruise on her shin from soccer, blue turning to green, beautiful as a map. We ate a lemon tart so perfect I nearly proposed to it. After, Thomas made me tea. He brought it to the table and set it down in front of me and caught my eye and did not touch it again. Thank you, I said, and I lifted the cup myself. I drank. The tea tasted like tea. The evening tasted like evening. My son's smile looked exactly like the boy who once scraped his knee, except now there were lines at the corners that I had not given him. Life had. He walked me home as the porch lights blinked on up and down Maple. He lingered at my steps. He looked as if he had something else to say. He didn't. He kissed my hair, the way he does. He went back down the walk whistling a tune I did not recognize. Inside, the house breathed. The window caught the last rosy smear of sunset. My pill organizer sat on the counter, a small, clear calendar. I opened the correct door with an old woman's hand that has done far more dangerous things than take care of itself. I swallowed the pill. I stood straight. I went to the sink and rinsed the glass and set it upside down to dry. If you could freeze the frame again there, the glass, the pill, the old woman in a clean kitchen at dusk, you would see nothing dramatic. No powder, no envelope. Only a story nobody else could write for me being written in a neat, ordinary hand. The dramatic part, the clickbait part, happens earlier. It does, honestly. It happens when a mother thinks her son is trying to kill her because she watched him pour a white something into her orange juice, and she decided that since she could choose a role in the story, she'd choose the one with alarm bells and shattered glass. It happens when a son thinks he is saving his mother by becoming her secret pharmacist, and he learns that saving someone without their yes can feel like drowning them a little at a time. And the satisfying ending you came for? It looks like two people walking on a chalk hopscotch their granddaughter drew, both of them pretending to wobble on the same square so the other can laugh and use the pause to breathe. It looks like a family psychologist telling them that consent is the language of love, and them believing her enough to practice. In the first half of the story, if you saw poison, I forgive you. So did I. In the second half, if you see help, you're right. So do I. The difference is that I asked for it, and he gave it with his hands open. That's how we keep each other, my son and I. Not by sneaking or by spying, not by powder or by plots, but by the gentle, clumsy science of telling the truth while the kettle hums and the porch light calls the moths. There will be other ordinary days. There will be ugly envelopes and kind ones. There will be more soup, and I will remember to eat it. There will be glass to wash and glasses to set down carefully. There will be morning walks where the peonies, against all proof, decide to bloom. There will be a boy, no, a man down the street with a porch swing that complains when he gets on it, and a mother who sits on hers and listens for the creak, not because she suspects him, not because she needs to catch him, but because she likes the sound that proves he is there. And if, someday, when I am very old, he brings me a cup and asks, "Do you want me to hold it while you drink?" I will say yes if I mean yes and no if I mean no. He will wait until I answer. Then he will do what love looks like in that minute. That is the end we sorted out, my son and I, with a doctor's pen and a counselor's rug and a shredded envelope and a plant that forgave soup. It isn't cinematic. It won't trend. But in a quiet kitchen with a clean glass, it's the most thrilling thing I know.
So, another story of my grandmother has end, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.